7. We are in the books now, almost halfway through the season, about halfway through the fantasy football regular season now at this point. Of course, today we're going to break down all of our fantasy football reactions. We're going to go through 5 Dynasty trades, our early top 5 waiver ads for week 8 of fantasy football. A lot going on this week. I would say, a little bit of a weird week in the NFL. I don't know if you felt that way. There was a lot of teams that shouldn't have won that one, which we'll get into. A lot of weird games, a lot of, kind of snooze fest games as well. So a lot to break down in today's live stream here. Let's kick things off as we usually do with the injuries that we want to look at. Not a ton of new injuries, which is good. I mean, last week was an absolute bloodbath, but couple new injuries to monitor. 2 for the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson. I mean, it sounds like they were just being cautious with him. He took a hard hit. He cleared the concussion protocol, never came back into the game. PJ Walker, of course, took the rest of that game over and ended up winning it, which we'll get on to later. Jerome Ford was the big one, though, in that game. He had a walking boot on for a right ankle injury, maybe a high ankle sprain, maybe a turf toe is what some of the fantasy doctors were kind of speculating. And then we also saw Jalen Waddle deal with a back injury on Sunday Night Football. He did end up returning to that game, but looked like he was playing through something, as did Jalen, by the way. Both of them kind of looked like they were playing through something. And then the final injury that we saw crop up yesterday was Christian Watson. Suffered a right knee injury, which he has a major medical history of in that right knee. Dr. Morse of the fantasy doctors said it could be anything from mid to mild to severe potentially. Like he doesn't really know exactly what the injury was. It could be just an MCL sprain, but he didn't actually rule out a severe injury for Christian Watson.
Yeah, hopefully for his sake, and for some of the best ball portfolio's sake, that he's okay. But that's very unfortunate when it comes to Christian Watson. I still think he's the most talented receiver on that team. But guess what? We haven't been able to showcase it with a bunch of barrage of injuries from him this year.
Yeah, not to mention some horrible play from Jordan Love in the first 3.5 quarters of that game. It felt like
he's horrific, man. Like he's bad. And I mean, we'll get into it in a second, but we did see a big uptick in these last few weeks from where Green Bay's projected draft order was going in, after week 2, after week 3, to where it is potentially now. And the takeaway that I have is, number 2, all of the worst teams in the NFL pretty much won. Like outside of Carolina, who was on bye, and Arizona, who lost their 4th in a row. You'll see that the top of the draft order right now is absolutely in shambles. Chicago won, Denver won, New York Giants won, New England won. Green Bay, obviously, like I mentioned, they jump up to the 7th overall projected pick if the season ended today, after being the 25th pick after week 2 when they started 2-0, and they were looking like, the young upstart team that everybody was projecting. Minnesota, they won their game too, but they're a 2-4 team. The Chargers are all the way down to the 9th overall pick now. Titans are at the 10th overall pick. Like, it's pretty insane when you think right now that Carolina, Arizona, and Chicago are projected to have the top 3 picks, with Chicago holding 2 of those picks with the Carolina pick and with their own pick. So if we're looking at it right now, Denver slated at 4. It's really fascinating because this is obviously a very talented quarterback class. We want to see where's going to be Caleb Williams. Like, where is he going to go? If the season ended today, he would be a Chicago Bear. Where's Drake May going to go? I mean, is Arizona moving on from Kyler? Is Denver going to be taking Drake May? Like, what we're seeing right now is basically the potential nesting spots for these young quarterbacks. And on top of all that, like, we still got money spots like Minnesota, potentially New England, the Giants. We got some teams now that, what if one of them takes Michael Penix? What if one of them takes JJ McCarthy? What if one of them takes one of the other quarterbacks in this class, not in that top 2? We're going to see a lot of Devy and rookie draft implications folding out in these next few weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The graphic that you have listed here with like the current draft order, like other than the Chargers, there's like every one of those teams could reasonably take a quarterback in the draft. Like, you got all of those teams there that are picking at the top. We got Chicago picking twice, Arizona, who, we don't know if they're going to pick a quarterback or not. Kyler's still there at the current point in time. Denver, the New York Giants, the New England Patriots, the Green Bay Packers. Again, if they're picking this high, I would assume that maybe the Jordan Love experiment doesn't go super well. Minnesota Vikings, we know Kirk Cousins is a free agent after this year. And then the Tennessee Titans, who, even though they spent a pick on Will Levis this past year in the 2nd round, it's possible that they could go after a quarterback as well. So, I mean, hell, it's a good year to need a quarterback. There's definitely going to be some in the draft. But at the same time, man, like, by the 6th overall pick, we might be running out of names here. Like, I don't know if we're going to be elevating, your Quinn Ewers types of the world up into the top 10 because of simple, supply and demand. But I will say, like, it's going to be interesting, and the tankathon is going to be really fascinating to watch, because I do think there's a couple crown jewels of this quarterback class, and I think there's actually more teams that, if they're picking this high, are going to be in the quarterback market. Like, I don't think, the New York Giants, are they going to just run it back with Daniel Jones next year if they have the 5th overall pick in the draft? Like that, they're one of the teams that really fascinates me because if it was me, I would, trade Daniel Jones away to whoever wants it, maybe the Commanders or, whoever.
Maybe you have to have maybe you give a pick to get rid of that contract at this point. Like if quarterback 3 who, like if JJ McCarthy, he's the current Heisman favorite. If JJ McCarthy keeps playing the way he has been, wins the Heisman Trophy, Michigan makes the fucking playoff, he's going to be a top 5 to 10 pick. Like we just have to accept that reality. We're going to see like Michael Penix, for example, outside of that last game that he just played, was literally the big time Heisman favorite. So it'll be fascinating to see like the stock of these quarterbacks moving forward and the potential teams picking that high. Because if you have a lot of 2024 draft capital, these quarterbacks showing that they're worth that type of spot, and these teams who need these quarterbacks, like if 3 top 10 quarterbacks or 4 top 10 quarterbacks go, your rookie picks are going to escalate in value by a fucking crap ton.
Yeah, no, it's really going to be fascinating to watch from like a rookie draft standpoint and an NFL draft standpoint. So yeah, that was definitely a big time takeaway. Minnesota, I believe you said that they won this week. They actually played tonight, so we don't know.
Right.
They're probably going to lose. It's San Francisco, but
my mistake. They won last week. My fault.
Yeah, they beat the Chicago Bears last week. I'm gonna do the thing that like nobody likes when you do. I may have had, this was the takeaway number 3. This might have been the most unlucky Sunday I've ever had in my time playing fantasy football because, I mean, for starters, like the Bijan Robinson sick, bad headache thing, that stung me in a lot of lineups, as I'm sure it did for a lot of you guys. But let me just lead you through the course of events that happened in my home league this week. So early in the week, I got an offer from D-Bell, who actually was in the chat at one point. I don't know if he's still in here. He offered me Deontay Foreman for Elijah Moore. Obviously, Deontay Foreman had a monster game, and had I done that trade, I probably would be winning this week because I still have Ayuk to go. I would need him to go nuclear tonight for that to hit. But if I had traded for Deontay Foreman, we're talking about, Ayuk needs like 7 points and I win the game or whatever. So that happened early in the week. Then I go on the waiver wire and I try and pick up some running back talent. I crap out on a lot of the guys. Before the games start, I'm trying to get Darrell Henderson. He gets picked up right before it happens. So last week in my league, I played Amari DiMercado in my lineup. Last week, as you guys know, Keontae Ingram was involved. Damian Williams was involved. My thought process, as you guys probably would have heard on Sunday morning's live stream, was, hey, it was Keontae Ingram's first game back. Maybe he's the lead back here. Maybe he's the guy to own. So this week, I played Keontae Ingram and I dropped Amari DiMercado. I traded away Wan'Dale Robinson for Keontae Ingram and Justice Hill because I didn't really have a good RB2 option with Devon A-Chain out. The guy that I had in was Tyler Algier, who actually had a great game because Bijan Robinson was sick. So then I swap out Tyler Algier and I put in Keontae Ingram, who drops an absolute donut. And then in the 4 p.m. window games, I have DK Metcalf in my flex. I put him in my flex because, I'm thinking, DK Metcalf might not be, ready to go this week because he's dealing with the rib and the hip issue. DK Metcalf gets ruled out. I'm like, shit, you know what? That sucks. So I pick up Tutu Atwell. I put him in and he has, a long touchdown or whatever. But I'm playing against Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, I literally got screwed from so many different angles. And on top of that, I mean, the Bucs defense did everything they could to win that game. And, of course, they lose to the Falcons because the Bucs offense can't do anything. So not a great week of fantasy football and real football in general for your boy here. But an unlucky Sunday, to say the least. But hopefully you guys got a little bit luckier than me.
I mean, contributing to that, you basically just experienced my Sunday from a couple weeks ago where I had everything go wrong in my fantasy matchup, fantasy across the board, like random guys blowing up out of nowhere. And then the Cowboys just finished it off with that egg that they laid against the 49ers. So I have experience with what you just basically explained.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't even just Sunday, right? Because it was all throughout the week. It was not getting the waiver guys that I needed and declining trades that I should have accepted. And, it was just brutal. Anyways, enough of my tangent. We can get into some positive news, which is Jahmyr Gibbs managers are probably quite excited about today's or Sunday's performance. He has his breakout game.
Yeah, he has his breakout game. Love it because my team, like I said in my home league, dropped the bomb. Deontay Foreman and Jahmyr Gibbs, both in my lineup. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen stack. Sam Laporta had a good bounce back week. Let's just say, your boy did pretty good overall. But speaking specifically with Jahmyr Gibbs, because I know he was a hotly debated topic. Everybody was saying, oh my God, Jahmyr Gibbs, what a bust. I picked him in the 3rd round. What do I do with him? Do I drop Jahmyr Gibbs? This and that. I've gotten the most crazy DMs about Jahmyr Gibbs with people legitimately concerned. And we saw a lot of those concerns basically fade away, at least for this week and for at least the intermediate future with David Montgomery out. 21 total opportunities in this game, 10 of them being targets, scores his first career touchdown, 21-yard touchdown, showcases the Jets, gets on the outside, ends up punching it into the end zone for ultimately almost 28 PPR points, RB3 overall performance on the week. While I don't expect them, like I said, once David Montgomery to come, once David Montgomery comes back to be this legit top 5, top 8 overall running back, that's not what I'm saying here. But at the same time, everything that we saw from him and everything that we've seen from him in sample sizes this year, whether it was being the full RB1 this week or even hopping in spurts these last couple weeks, Jahmyr Gibbs has been efficient all year, and he showed at least this week he can handle that type of workload if the Lions trust him upon it. Now, the reason why I point that out is I mentioned on the Trade Target show a couple weeks ago where Jahmyr Gibbs is probably one of the cheapest league-winning potential players available in fantasy. And again, like I said, if Dave Montgomery's healthy, I'm probably only viewing him as an RB2-3 baseline. But the implied value here is massive. Like Jahmyr Gibbs showed you that he is the type of player that can win a fantasy matchup on his own right. Whether it's Dave Montgomery, potentially getting banged up later in the year, or maybe just Jahmyr Gibbs earning more work downright with how well he's played. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, come week 13, week 14, once you need those players in those playoff weeks, can be one of those crucial leverage pieces that win you a matchup.
For me with Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm glad I got my exposure to him in best ball because I think he's still going to be really frustrating in season long and, managed formats because once Montgomery comes back, I still think he's going to have his weeks here and there. I'm not excited about him being like a league winning running back as long as David Montgomery's on the field. So I would probably in a managed league try and shop Jahmyr Gibbs for someone who has a little bit more of a solidified, stable role that, I can project them to get the work week in, week out, not like a Rashad White type or somebody that's terrible, but like, maybe you can get to an Isaiah Pacheco, or maybe you can get to somebody like that who, they're both young running backs that have, the appeal of being in a good offense. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, like this was a good step in the right direction, but I still think there's going to be frustrating days ahead for him.
Yeah, there will be frustrating days. Like we mentioned, we know David Montgomery's not going away. And on like obviously if we knew that type of role was coming into the year, we wouldn't have picked him as high as we did. But he's really fascinating, man, because we saw what Devon Achane showed speed can do for an offense, especially a one that's called by Ben Johnson, man. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he was used exactly what we needed to see him. The efficient runs to the outside, getting the receiving work. Yeah, of course, he's not going to be the 10 yards per target player, but that's the type of work he's getting, man. He's getting work in space. He's contributing after the catch. Looks really good. Like, I don't know, man. I'm starting to get very, very bullish on him moving forward.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic is how I would explain my Jahmyr Gibbs, stance at this point in time. Takeaway number 5 is a lot of stuff from the Rams and Steelers game, which of course was my lock of the week, and the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up winning the game somehow. I don't know how. Don't ask me how, but there was a lot of weird stuff that happened. For starters, the number 2 receivers were number 2 receivers, quote unquote, for the Steelers, out targeting the number 1 receivers. Puka Nacua out targets Cooper Kupp 12-6, which I don't think anybody saw coming because Cooper Kupp is almost an automatic 15 targets a game when he's on the field. But Puka Nacua basically baby boyed him in this one, had a monster game, probably the best game of his awesome career so far. And then George Pickens, again, why I said quotations with number 2 receivers. I am officially making my apology to George Pickens right now. George Pickens is a stud. He has 28% of his team's targets in his second NFL season. I thought he was a coin flip prospect, and I still believe he was a coin flip prospect that very easily could have gone the route of, Jameson Williams or Treylon Burks or like some of these guys that, were coin flip prospects that looked better than George Pickens. I mean, they were all in the same draft class, and George Pickens has pretty much proved me wrong from every avenue. He looks great. He's still making his like toe tap, spectacular catches. Only now he's getting open more consistently. Only now he's commanding the targets like we never saw from him at the University of Georgia. So this game was weird altogether, but my biggest takeaway for sure has to be that how high does George Pickens rank in Dynasty? He's got to be top 15 to 20 Dynasty wide receiver at the very least.
Yeah, or at least very close to that. George Pickens, like you kind of said, the main difference for him and the main question mark that I feel like he's answered is how is he going to do with an expanded route tree? We saw his route tree last year. He was running your classic, X receiver, big physical boundary receiver type of routes. He wasn't running a lot of, crossers. He wasn't running a lot of, creative routes to get him in space. He was basically just saying, hey, I'm going to line up outside the numbers. Just throw me the football and I'll try to come down with it. That's basically what George Pickens was. And we've seen that when Deontay Johnson got hurt this year, the Steelers took the training wheels off of them. And I talked about it in some of the wide receiver tier list shows. I even think I mentioned it on a different show as well. But like George Pickens this year has basically, like I said, training wheels are off. Okay, now you got to learn how to ride your bike. You got to learn how to ride your bike. You got to learn how to stop when you need to. You got to know how to slow down. You got to know how to hit turns. We got to let you learn that on your own. And I feel like George Pickens, the young player that he is, took that and ran with it. Now he's, Lance Armstrong out there, if that makes any sense, right? He's shown that he can run the full route tree. He's shown that he can earn targets, and he's shown that he can impact the game in multiple ways, not just by winning some contested catch, 35 yards down the field 3 times every game.
Yeah, because that's what he was as a rookie. And again, maybe we should have been like, and I would say I did turn the corner on George Pickens a little bit, like towards the end of the offseason. I was like, I'm going to mix in some best ball shares because, there's a world where George Pickens does take a step forward this year. And, generally speaking, I still think my evaluation of him coming out of Georgia was generally pretty accurate. I think he was a very coin flip type of prospect. Plus, then we heard some stuff about off the field issues, and it made me scared off of George Pickens in rookie draft specifically. But at the same time, like, an 800-yard rookie season with like 4 touchdowns, spectacular plays, maybe I should have taken that into account a little bit more with George Pickens. And I would say it's, completely over. Like he's going to be the stud, wide receiver one of the Steelers going forward because it was Deontay Johnson's first game back. He did miss most of the first week of the season with the hamstring injury, but I will say, like, Deontay Johnson versus George Pickens, like, if you asked me before the season who gets more targets this year, I would have said Deontay Johnson. Yeah. It probably wasn't even close. And that is not what has played out so far. Pickens has been consistently the number one receiver for this team, one of the only bright spots of the Steelers offense this season. There's been games where Kenny Pickett can't complete a first down, and George Pickens had like a 75-yard slant touchdown to the house. Like, there was a game like that this year where the Steelers offense couldn't do anything
the Browns game,
outside of George Pickens.
That's the Browns game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like they couldn't do anything that game. The only thing that they did well was throw that ball to George Pickens in that game. So the other thing, big takeaway from this game was the Rams backfield was all over the place, right? I mean, going into the week, on the waiver show early in the week, I said, Zach Evans is the guy that you want to pick up. Then they go out and they sign Darrell Henderson. And not only did Darrell Henderson lead this backfield in touches and have like a pretty solid fantasy day, and I'm sure we're going to talk about him in the waiver targets, Darrell Henderson caused Zach Evans, as did Royce Freeman, to not record a single snap on offense. Did not record a single snap. Darrell Henderson comes off the street and leads this backfield. Kyron Williams was officially put on IR, so he is going to be out for a while. Ronnie Rivers was put on IR. So, I mean, for the short-term future, next 3-4 games, like Darrell Henderson's going to be a guy that you could probably put into your lineup as a solidified RB2, adding to what I talked about earlier with my home league struggles. Why didn't I just pick up Darrell Henderson? I wasted all this fab on Jordan Mason and all this other shit, and I could have just picked up Darrell Henderson and played him.
Yeah, I mean, who could have thought that Kareem Hunt and Darrell Henderson, 2 running backs that all offseason we talked about, oh my God, the running back rotations for the Browns and the Rams are going to be so much better. These guys are so clearly washed. Let's see what happens. That in the face of adversity, these teams just go out, sign them back, and look like they haven't skipped a beat. Like Kareem Hunt looks like Kareem Hunt from last year. Darrell Henderson looks like Darrell Henderson from when people thought he was a bell cow running back. Like, I don't understand how we can feel like we took something away from the offseason, and then the team just reverts back to like the old habit. It's like, every time you get drunk, you go out on a Saturday night and you feel the need to smoke a dart. That feels like what the Rams and the Browns are doing with these old dusty running backs.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned so far this year, you could look at a number of different backfields for this lesson. Like David Montgomery in Detroit is another good example of this. Coaches don't like young running backs, man. They don't like young running backs. And we need to be really careful when it comes to, predicting that like rookie running back A will just like win out a backfield early on in the season. It simply doesn't happen very often. And yeah, like Dameon Pierce did it last year, and it can happen, but at the same time, like if the drumbeat isn't like really loud for a young running back doing it, it's probably smart to assume that, we're talking about the veteran being the guy that gets the nod.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like old dusty running backs that just completely went off despite everybody basically writing them off, my next takeaway is that Tyson Bagent and Deontay Foreman, I'm sure leading the Bears to a W, was on every single person's bingo card, right? Like Tyson Bagent, how is it that the Raiders just let a rookie UDFA quarterback put up 30 points on their defense in his first career start? Like, genuinely speaking, I thought Taysom Bagent, it'd be disgusting. We wouldn't want to watch it. You remember like a couple years ago when Ben DiNucci got forced to us on primetime and he just did not look like an NFL player? I was scared that might be the downside for Taysom Bagent, but he showed that he could be efficient. He moved the ball pretty well. 21, almost like 190 total yards from scrimmage. Yo,
Sorry, you were lagging out
that
for
got
me
out
there,
for you?
Danny.
Okay, I was gonna. Good now.
You're still lagging out a little bit.
What the fuck?
Here, it says you're frozen. I'll put you in the back seat for now. Just close some tabs or whatever you got to do. But basically, I'll just go off of your point there. Like Tyson Bagent actually looking like a functional NFL quarterback was something that I didn't see really coming. The Raiders were pretty frustrating on the other side of the ball as a Josh Jacobs manager in this game as well. And then Deontay Foreman posting the best fantasy performance on the week was also definitely not on my bingo card. I liked him as a decent start this week. Hopefully we told you guys to start him if you asked us. I definitely, I'm pretty shocked that Deontay Foreman was that good.
I think I'm okay now. I mean, going back to that, Tyson Bagent, big game. Deontay Foreman, 120 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns. Like, where did that come from? Again, I'm not complaining because, again, I had him in my home league. Him and Gibbs performed a pretty decent bit for me. But, like, I thought, okay, maybe he sneaks into the end zone, scores like 9 or 10 points, and he's a solid RB2. But the guy is literally the RB1 overall on the week.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, not a whole lot exciting came from that game outside of Deontay Foreman. That was pretty much the only thing that fantasy managers could hang their hat on. DJ Moore had a touchdown called back that I'm sure pained a lot of people. Josh Jacobs
I loved it.
A toe tap away from having a receiving touchdown, which pained me as a Josh Jacobs manager. So not a great game overall. There was a lot of games this week, like the Broncos, Packers, and the Raiders and Bears that were just like, can we just punt these teams into the sun? Like, I really don't want to watch these teams anymore. Like, as much as they got some fantasy players here and there, like they actually irritate me, like on a week over week basis. Like, aside from what Tyson Bagent did, I'm like, do I really want to watch 10 more games of this?
No. Real quick, by the way, I knew my fantasy week was finally turned around from a luck standpoint when DJ Moore got that touchdown overruled, which negated 6 points from Marco. And then I had Deontay Foreman who punched it in. That's like a 12-point swing right there. So I know you know how it feels. Obviously, it's just like a random thing that happens in the NFL, but like the psychology of like knowing that happens early in your fantasy matchup, like just sets the tone for the rest of the matchup.
Dude, the second my fantasy matchup started, Jerome Ford had scored a 70-yard touchdown. It was one of those weeks, and I saw it coming right from the beginning. So one other takeaway that I really want to talk about, because I think it's really actually quite exciting, especially from the waivers perspective that we'll talk about later. 2 rookie wide receivers saw really big usage upgrades, and one other guy might see big usage upgrades depending on what happens this week, because we're hearing, Jerry Jeudy potentially could get traded. So Marvin Mims, definitely keep that in mind. When we talk about the waiver stuff, he could be a good stash. But the 2 guys that I really want to talk about are Jalen Hyatt and Rashee Rice. So Jalen Hyatt, this past week, he led all Giants wide receivers in targets. He's been a consistent full-time starter now for 2 or 3 games in 2 wide receiver sets opposite Darius Slayton. And then Wan'Dale obviously is the main slot receiver there. So he's a guy that I think I'm going to probably be talking about in the waiver wire targets. He's probably somebody that you maybe want to go pick up. And then Rashee Rice, I mean, we talked about this on the Sunday morning live stream. He finally gets the routes. That's what we were looking for, Rashee Rice, right? On a per route basis, he was clearly the best Chiefs wide receiver on that team. Targets per route run, he was up there with some of the best receivers in the league. He was like 30% targets per route run entering the game. He has an 81.0 PFF receiving grade on the season, which is 15 points higher than any other Chiefs wide receiver. And it's actually the 3rd highest graded player on the Chiefs offense overall. Mahomes and Kelsey obviously being the top 2 right now. Surprise too. I mean, he leads all Chiefs wide receivers in targets yet again. Now that he's getting the full allotment of routes and he's finally getting the snaps, Rashee Rice is a guy that, I mean, he's rostered in over 50% of leagues right now, but if he's still available in your league, like you have to go pick this guy up.
Yeah, he's 100% fab player if he's still available in your league. That's pretty much the gather I've gotten from it. Anytime you have the opportunity to be the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes and number 2 overall weapon on the offense behind Travis Kelce, you need to target that player. I mean, he's looked phenomenal. And like you said, the usage is finally matching the production. Like if this guy gets a full-time role, dude, he's got top 20 wide receiver upside. Maybe even that might even be underselling it.
Yeah, it's been really impressive to see again. As somebody that I didn't think was a very good prospect, he's come in and he's actually been able to
Yeah.
earn some targets. Which I mean, he did that at SMU. He was able to earn targets at SMU. He just the separation factor has been much better in the NFL, and that's something that maybe I bake into my evaluations going forward. Is like, if you have the athleticism, which Rashee Rice did have, he was like a decent athlete at the combine for his size. A good wide receiver coach, like, the one that Kansas City probably has, can coach you up at the NFL level. I mean, the rest of their wide receivers don't seem to be benefiting from their good wide receiver coaching, Sky Moore specifically. But at the same time, Rashee Rice, I guess maybe he's just built different above the shoulders. I'm not sure.
Okay, I got to ask this question real quick on that. Like, what went wrong with Sky Moore, genuinely?
I honest to God, man, I think we bet on Sky Moore's profile 9 out of 10 times it hits.
That's what I'm saying.
You get a guy that goes second round to Kansas City Chiefs with the profile that he had. Yeah, he was a small school guy, whatever. He had a good profile. And I think that most of the time that player hits. And maybe he has Christian Kirk's career trajectory. And by year 3, he's like a year 1 and 2 face planner. We all write him off. And he has a breakout 3rd season or 4th season. He's just a late bloomer. But at the same time, like, I'm not holding my breath for that. Like, he should be way better than he is.
Well, the thing too, obviously it was a limited sample size, but he wasn't even that bad when he got playing time last year. And this year he's gotten playing time and he just looks awful.
Yeah, no, he doesn't look great. And it's really frustrating because, again, he was my number 1 sleeper heading into the year. Thankfully, Raheem Mostert was my number 2, so that one's saving me big time. Yeah. But number 1 sleeper heading into the year was Sky Moore. And again, I still think that prospect profile, the process was 100% there. He just he hasn't gotten it done. So not great for Sky Moore's long-term outlook, but definitely good news for Rashee Rice's long-term outlook.
Yep, for sure. Sorry, low hiccups. We go on to takeaway number 8, and that's Browns win a nail biter against the Colts in a game where Deshaun Watson left early. So it kind of sucked because going into
probably a good thing that he left early, by the way, because he looked fucking awful in that game.
Oh, I'm just saying for my Amari Cooper stock, it kind of scared me because when PJ Walker came in, he could move the offense relatively well, but he just could not find Amari Cooper at all, man. Like Amari Cooper, I think commanded like 9 or 10 targets in this game, finishes with 2 receptions for 22 yards. Like, it's so funny because with Amari Cooper, we've always talked about the fact that, oh, is he really that good of a player? He's in a great situation in Dallas, but he was very volatile from an actual like player standpoint. And it's been the complete opposite when he got to Cleveland. Like, if he still had the situation that he had in Dallas and he was this good of a player on a week-to-week basis, just commanding targets, being involved, like, the guy would be probably a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. And right now, like, we are seeing like what the upside could be. We just need either A, Deshaun Watson to freaking stay healthy for a game, or B, PJ Walker to be able to connect on some of these targets. Because honest to God, as an Amari Cooper manager, it's been frustrating to watch.
Yeah, the other thing too is, I mean, Deshaun Watson is currently the NFL's lowest graded passer in EPA per play right now.
We're gonna have the conversation.
Like this year, man, like the Browns are like, they're looking like idiots for trading for this guy. And not only because of the whole PR situation, but like, at least you thought you were getting a superstar quarterback. And not only has he not been a superstar quarterback, we're getting to the point where it's not rust anymore. We can't blame rust. We can't blame the fact that he, isn't, practicing with his teammates and he was suspended for 10 games. Or you have to play like the elite quarterback that
he looks like last year's Russell Wilson. Is basically beating around the bush is what we're getting to right now. He looks like last year's Russell Wilson. I'm scared of him going forward. And pose a question for you right now. Where do you think the Browns would be right now in the AFC standing, like where we think about them, if CJ Stroud was their quarterback?
Dude, if CJ Stroud was their quarterback, they might be the most exciting team in the AFC North. The Ravens are probably the best team, and the Bengals, if they can figure their stuff out.
I would take the Browns over the Bengals all day with Stroud. All day.
Yeah, no, I would as well. Like, especially this year so far. On paper, I would say it's probably comparable.
Sure,
but it'd be pretty crazy to see what Stroud could be doing with the Browns right now. And again, like, this is just such a Browns thing to do, right? Like, you can't hit in the draft on a quarterback. Like, how many times in our lifetime have the Browns taken a first-round quarterback or a highly decorated quarterback prospect? So many, and none of them have hit. Sans 2018 Baker Mayfield, basically. And then
hit.
You're like, we're done with rookies. We're done trying to get the young quarterback that's going to lead us to the promised land. We're going to go get a known commodity, a guy that has been an elite quarterback for multiple years, a top 5 quarterback in fantasy, 2018, 2019, and 2020 with Deshaun Watson. And he's looks as though the Browns drafted a first-round quarterback again.
Yeah. And it would be completely take lock of us if we just said nothing was wrong and everything's going to be fine and he's just going to be a top 12 quarterback asset after this year.
No, he's definitely not. Like, how many, like, realistically, we got to start having the conversation. Like, at what point is Deshaun Watson need to be viewed in the same light as, like, who would you rather have in Dynasty right now? Jared Goff or Deshaun Watson?
I would
like,
take
that's
Watson,
a real conversation now.
That's where he's got to be. Like, I think you got to drop him down.
And I think it would be I think it would be completely hypocritical of us not to say Jared Goff.
Probably, yeah.
Like, that's where we're at with Deshaun Watson, man. Like, it's brutal because the guy heading into the year, again, we were hopeful that he was going to come back and he was going to perform and he was going to have, the season that we saw him have in Houston, only in a Browns uniform with better weapons and that kind of thing. It's not been good so far with Deshaun Watson, to say the least. So, yeah, Danny's camera is acting up. I will close out some of these other takeaways that we got here. The other thing, actually, quickly, that I want to mention with the Colts game is that they kind of looked like a Jekyll and Hyde offense again, which is weird because the Browns defense played an outstanding game, yet Josh Downs and the Indianapolis Colts and Gardner Minshew in the run game showed up as well. So I think that just might be what we expect from the Colts. Like, 1 week they're going to look really bad, 1 week they're going to look pretty solid. That's kind of the Gardner Minshew experience, to say the least. So that's something that was an interesting takeaway. I mean, Josh Downs, awesome game, like over 100 yards. Looks exactly like the prospect that I saw at UNC, and the guy that for a large majority of the offseason and in the Dynasty Wall Street Journal, I thought was a better prospect than Quentin Johnston, despite one of them going in the top 25 overall picks and one of them falling to round 3. Josh Downs can ball. I don't care what his size is. I don't care that he ran like barely in the 4.5s or whatever, like 4.50 or whatever he ran at the combine. He can play, man. He's a good football player.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, the other takeaway, of course, is Myles Garrett is just a freaking nature.
He's a freaking nature, dude. Some of the plays that this guy's making, like, are absolutely extraordinary.
I think there's a legitimate case to be made that obviously you have like guys like Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, but like, I'd probably say right now, Myles Garrett has to be the defensive player of the year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't even think it's a question right now. I think he would have to be the defensive
unstoppable.
Player of the year.
Yeah, and I'm obviously a huge Micah Parsons fan, but dude, Myles Garrett looks unstoppable, and they have the best defense in the league. Yeah, like Gardner Minshew kind of, tested that a little bit, putting up 38 points on it. But when you needed your best player to go make a play, he got you a touchdown with Myles Garrett.
Yeah, literally. And he blocked, what do you have, 2 strip sacks and a blocked field goal too?
Did
like
you see the blocked field goal, dude?
That was insane. That? Like nobody is like a capable enough athlete. So an interesting thing with Myles Garrett, and then we can move on. My girlfriend assumes that offensive and defensive linemen are all out of shape. That's her assumption, right? Because she sees them, they're the big uglies in the
and then
she
saw Garrett.
And then I'm like, this is what a defensive lineman can look like. If they're this big and this freakishly athletic, this is what, like, and then I showed her some pictures of Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald and Nick Bosa and these guys that actually are in great shape for defensive linemen. And she's like, why don't they all look like this? And I'm like, well, I feel like that's easier said than done, but at the same time, like, it makes a lot of sense. It's like when Myles Garrett is this big and this strong and this athletic, how could you not bet on a guy like that? And this, I mean, we're seeing it with your Michigan boy, Aiden Hutchinson, too, in Detroit. Like, he doesn't look like a defensive lineman. He looks like a tight end.
Dude, it's insane, like, just how athletic the defensive line position has gone to. Like, even some of these D tackles now, man. You look at, like, for example, Chris Jones is 290 pounds playing defensive tackle, and sometimes they'll give him reps rushing off the edge. Are you kidding me?
No, it's pretty crazy.
Like, it's honestly phenomenal. And I would argue that some of his best work has actually come aligned off the edge. Chris Jones.
Yeah.
The 6'6", 290 pounder. Also worth noting.
It's funny, but then, of course, there's guys like Trayvon Walker who are freakishly athletic and haven't really done anything since they've been in the NFL. But at the same time, I mean, if you get a productive defensive lineman that is that freakishly athletic, I mean, they got to be, in the conversation for the first overall pick any given year, which they usually are. So, definitely makes a lot of sense. What's up?
Shout out Will Anderson.
Yeah, Will Anderson's having a good rookie season as well. So 2 more takeaways. We'll rapid fire these, and then we'll get into some of the dynasty trades. A couple backfields that are starting to irritate me. Just out of curiosity, if you guys were wondering what our thoughts are on these backfields. The Denver Broncos backfield, a little bit of a bounce back for Javonte Williams, so that's good news to see. He's starting to, I think he played about 50% of the snaps. Definitely good to see that. The Colts' continued love for Zach Moss is irritating us as a Jonathan Taylor managers. 50-50 split, like literally down the middle, like touches, snaps, everything. in Indianapolis, despite Jonathan Taylor looking a lot better and getting into the end zone, having a productive fantasy day. Zach Moss is kind of a thorn in his side at this point in time. So that's irritating me at this point in time. And then we have Chris Rodriguez was a thing for Washington today. Brian Robinson got like 40% of the snaps.
Yeah.
In that game. I mean, he saw the end zone, found the end zone, but he had like 8 touches or something like just not like, what are we doing, Washington? Why are we involving Chris Rodriguez?
Why is
Tony
he a thing?
Fumbles is getting carries as well. Like we just give Brian Robinson all the work, honestly, like at this point in time. And then, I mean, there was the whole debacle in the Falcons backfield, which we really haven't even addressed yet. Bijan Robinson has a headache before the game, doesn't get any touches. He has 1 touch in the game. And Tyler Algier gets most of the carries, Cordero Patterson sighting as well. And then the Falcons offense doing kind of Falcons offense things where Desmond Ridder makes some stupid plays. And I'll comment on that game really quick as a Buccaneers fan. They wanted to lose the game slightly less than we wanted to lose the game on offense because, I mean, I don't know how you can go from Desmond Ridder goal line, snap fumble and getting what was the play in the Super Bowl where Don Beebe punches out the Cowboys guy running into the end zone in the Super Bowl. Like that was what Winfield did to Desmond Ridder, and the ball goes out of the back of the end zone for a touchback.
For the modern example, it's the Derek Carr. Do you remember?
What was the Derek Carr example?
You're talking about the fumble out of the back of the end zone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Derek Carr, 2017 versus the Cowboys.
Right.
That was the index card game. The Raiders go down the field to potentially score the game-winning touchdown. Derek Carr rushing to the outside, tries to reach over the pylon, loses control of the football before he crosses the plane, and the Cowboys get it on a touchback at the end of the game.
Right. I still think it's more similar to the Cowboys Super Bowl one where they were killing the Bills in that game, but Don Beebe punches it out because Leon Lett or whatever, whoever it was, slows down because it looked like Desmond Ridder slowed down. And Winfield, first team All-Pro safety. Let's get that straight. He's fucking unbelievable. He's having the best year of his career, short career, but he's unbelievable this year. And we made the plays to win that game. We did it. The defense brought the plays that they needed to make. Baker Mayfield throws a stupid interception. We cannot run the ball to save our fucking lives right now. Holy crap, is Rachaad White terrible in between the tackles.
Bad, bro.
It's still not totally his fault, man. The interior offensive line is the worst I've ever seen run blocking.
Dude, we have way too many what's called Rachaad White conversations for such a bad football
It's not all his fault, man. Like, he can't run when the offensive line gets blown up every play.
Hey, you could have just stopped it that he can't run.
I know. He's not good. The interior offensive line isn't good. We should pass the ball 90% of the time, honest to God.
Yeah, no, I feel that. What a mess of a game, by the way. Having rooting interest. For the record, obviously the fumble was bad, but I mean, the 3 fumbles were bad, but
he tried to lose that game. Like, you could spin that any way you want. Like, Desmond Ridder should have lost that game for them.
Hear me out, though. As a pure passer, he was pretty good in the game, though.
He was okay. Overall. He was okay. He hit London when he needed to. He hit, Pitts on a big play at the end of the game or whatever, and they win and kick the field goal or whatever. Dude, your boy Cody Mock, Tyler or Flett, he sucked, bro. He was so bad in this game, and he's been bad all year. He's been horrible all year. So, I mean, they got to figure out their interior offensive line because, Luke Gadecki and Tristan Wirfs, it's like a tale of 2 offensive lines. Our tackles are unbelievable, and then our interior is the worst in the league.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's really bad. Anyways, final takeaway. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills game.
Dude. The AFC Cowboys is what I refer to them as, because on one week you'll watch them and be like, this is the best football team in the league. Like, everything is clicking. Their defense is humming. Their offense looks phenomenal. And then you'll just have a game like yesterday where, like, I'm questioning what the Bills are, man. I'm really trying to gauge what Buffalo team will show up on any given week. Like, on one week, you'll have Buffalo showing up on the road against the Chiefs and knocking off Kansas City. And then the next week, they're allowing 29 points to a 1-win Patriots team. A Patriots team who hasn't scored over 21 points all season. You just allowed 29 to them. And I understand there's some context here. Trey White, obviously injured with that torn Achilles. Matt Milano out of this game. Like, Mac Jones, I don't care, man. Like, I don't care how injured you are as a defense. You cannot allow Mac Jones to complete 90% of his passes with the weapons group that the Patriots have. You could have your full entire second string defense out there. That should not be a thing. So with Buffalo, it's like, what Buffalo team are we getting forward, man? Like, are we getting a team that can legitimately contend in the AFC? Or are we getting a team that is probably a divisional round knockout?
Yeah, it's tough, man. The Patriots scored more points in this game than they scored weeks 3, 4, and 5 combined.
Yeah.
Against the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Jets. Like they shouldn't score any points on your defense if you consider yourself a Super Bowl contender. And it's funny that you call them the AFC Cowboys, because like the Cowboys, what they do well is beat the shit out of bad teams. And the Patriots are a bad team. So you'd figure that they would wipe the floor with them and beat them by 35 points, like they did against the Commanders and like they did against the Raiders. The Buffalo Bills dominated bad teams and then, lose a close one to the Jets, and they'll lose a close one here and there. But losing a close one to the probably one of the worst teams in the league, at least the worst offense in the league, in my opinion, the New England Patriots, that's bad.
It's going to be comical when I go to a Cowboys-Bills game this year, and I'm just questioning which team wants to lose the game more.
That's probably what's going to happen. It's exactly what's going to happen. But here's the thing. Neither team can beat a good team, so who's going to show up and beat the good team? Like that's basically what you're coming down to.
It's like a cat and mouse thing, man. Who's the cat, who's the mouse in the situation?
Yeah, literally. So, not a good situation overall for the Buffalo Bills. Something that we'll have to monitor going forward in the AFC side of things. Like, again, does it feel like there's no good teams in the NFL to you?
Yeah, the Niners are the only good team.
Also, yeah, Jared's playing out the meme. But like, who's the best team in the AFC? Chiefs?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like 2 weeks ago, we would have said the Dolphins, and then
gun to my head, if I had to predict the Super Bowl right now. First of all, I was always like, from a power ranking standpoint, I guess you're right about the Chiefs that they weren't technically the number one in the power rankings, but like they were still, like, in my opinion, the number one favorite in the AFC. Like, even if they were 3-3 to start the year, like, it's still Patrick Mahomes.
Well, they're going to sleepwalk into 12 or 13 wins like every single year. That's just what's going to happen. And I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention anything about the Ravens beating the crap out of the Detroit Lions.
You make the argument that the second best
they
team
may
in the
have
AFC.
vaulted themselves into a top 4 team in the AFC.
I think you make the argument that they're second best right now.
Yeah, but there's a real argument there. I'm interested to see how the rest of the season plays out because, like you said, outside of the 49ers and Eagles and Chiefs, like there's kind of a debacle the rest of the league. Like we have no real idea who the rest of the good teams are. It looks like the Dolphins are a good team. Looks like the Bills are a good team. Looks like the Cowboys are a good team. Looks like the Lions are a good team. But then it looks like
what
the
even
Ravens
are the Chargers?
They have games where they look terrible.
Okay, what even are the Chargers? Because I feel like they're somehow going to still win.
Chargers are a team that are going to fire their coach in week 11 is what they are.
So you think they continue this?
Yes, I do.
I think they're going to somehow find their way to like 10 wins, maybe get to 17, and then get blown out in the first round.
I think they're going to win 7 games and fire Brandon Staley is what I think is going to happen.
7 games? Wow.
Yes.
Dude, I understand that they lost 2 in a row, but holy crap.
Dude, they're like 2-5 right now, aren't they?
They're 2-4, but I mean, they still, the 2 of their last losses still like.
What inspires you about the Chargers? Justin Herbert. He can't do everything.
Sure, I mean, when they play some of the munchers on their schedule.
Yeah, well, they're gonna play some bad teams here and there, but like I don't know, man. I'm just not excited about the Chargers at all to do anything of relevance. Because they like win a close game for fuck's sakes, dude. They can't win a close game ever.
For what it's worth, obviously it finished 31-17, but like that game was back and forth all game, and then we just saw the difference between a good coach team and a bad coach team when the Chiefs down the stretch like took control, and the Chargers just kept making mistake after mistake after mistake.
Yeah. The other thing that like doesn't make any rational sense in the NFL is I feel like every fan base is mad. Like no fan base is excited about their team. That's what my point is. Like there's no good teams in the NFL. Like unless you're a 49ers fan or like an Eagles fan, even Eagles fans are mad. Like they're like, our team sucks. Like we can't do anything, even though you're like 6-1. Like no fan base seems satisfied with their team right now.
The Cowboys are going to be probably going to be, knock on wood, obviously. They still got to go and take care of business. But assuming shit doesn't go completely wrong this week, they're going to be going into that game against Philadelphia 5-2. And I'll still not know if they're like a legit, like really good team.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much how I feel about every team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right now. So we can pivot now to the Dynasty Trade segment of this live stream. We're going to go through some of the most hotly debated Dynasty Trade names. I picked out specific players that I think are going to be hot names on the market right now. Let's kick things off here with Duke's trade. So this is the first one we're going to look at. He said it's a 10-team Superflex PPR start 9. He is the defending champ of his league, and he's been the highest scorer in 6 of 7 games so far this season. So very good contending team. He adds AJ Brown to this team. No 2024 first now. He obviously projects to be a top 3 team in his league, but he now has 3 2025 first. He didn't specify whether the guy that he traded this to is going to be like a early 2025 first or a mid. Let's just presume it's mid for the time being. Basically, he trades away T. Higgins, Puka Nacua, and a late, very late, probably 2024 first for AJ Brown, and let's say a random 2025 first. What say you on that deal?
Feels a little bit steep, in my opinion. The pick swap could work out in a big way. I think that's ultimately the motivation here. It's tough, man, because I feel like Higgins and Nacua for AJ Brown on the surface level, I would rather have the 2 players. But if you're locking in that pick as the 111, the 112, figuratively, like you made it sound like his team's like completely dominant.
He said he's been the highest scoring team 6 of 7 weeks, and he won last year. So I would say he's at least a top 3 team in his league, if not the best team in his league.
So then you're looking at, let's just say, at best case scenario for the other guy, it's the 110 with Higgins and Nacua for AJ Brown, and like you said, a mid-projected 2025 first. Again, face value-wise, I would rather have the bottom side, but at the same time, knowing the context of your team and knowing that you're probably loaded everywhere, if you scored the most points in the league 6 to 7 weeks, if you won the championship last year, I don't hate the rationale of trying to go buy a stud. I just don't know if I would have been able to meet this type of price.
Yeah, I think I like it. I mean, in a start, it's a 10-team league, so studs are going to matter a lot. And also, it's a start 9, so studs are going to matter a lot.
Sure.
And I think at face value, if you stretch the value side of this trade, it's a 20, let's say it's an early to mid or a mid 2025 first for T. Higgins and Puka Nacua and a late first for AJ Brown. Again, face value, I probably like the Higgins and Nacua side, but I think given your team's situation, I don't mind this. And I mean, generally speaking, do I want to buy a guy coming off of like 6 straight 125-yard games? Probably not. Like, I probably want to buy low on somebody who's a stud rather than go after a guy who's just like absolutely scorching the earth week over week like AJ Brown is. But at the same time, I mean, your team is probably loaded. So like the only type of guys that's going to get in your lineup are a guy like AJ Brown.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the context here that I don't mind it. Next deal from Jacob. He says, trade between a Steelers fan, me, and a Commanders fan. 10-team full PPR, non-superflex tight end premium. 50-yard plays are worth 1 point. First should be mid to late. Second should be late. So let's look at this deal right now. He ends up receiving George Pickens in a 2024 first and sending McLaurin in a 20. The first right off the bat, the pick swap is completely wrong. I don't know.
He said it's a Commanders fan. That's what he said.
I understand Commanders fan, but at the same time, you're getting a more productive, younger wide receiver and also upgrading your pick.
Yeah, I mean, dude, George Pickens is wide receiver 18 in points per game in his second NFL season right now. That is better than Terry McLaurin has ever been in his whole career in points per game. So, yeah, I mean, you're getting a way more valuable, not even just
way more valuable,
like a way more valuable dynasty wide receiver, and you're getting the better pick. So, even if this was McLaurin in a first for Pickens in a second, I honestly might still take the Pickens side.
Yeah, or at the very least, you're easily taking Pickens over McLaurin in a 2, and you got a first.
Yeah, literally. So great move there.
Yeah.
That one we don't have to spend too much time on. We can move on to Ronnie's trade. So this one, he wanted to get a Sam Laporta share. So he trades away Marquise Brown, Ramondre Stevenson, and Luke Musgrave for Sam Laporta. And what he says is probably going to be 201 or 202. So really early 2024 second at
Smash. That. You want to ask me my thoughts on this? So this is a 10 team. So right off the bat, that's going to be the 111 or the 112 in a majority, 12-team league. For E's sake, again, I would take the pick over Marquise because of the value factors at hand there. But for E's sake, let's just say Marquise equals the second. Then you got Ramondre and Musgrave for Laporta. Laporta, for me, is a top 3 overall dynasty tight end right now. The only 2 I have in that discussion are Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts. Like, Sam Laporta is that guy.
I would say
already.
If I was a full status rebuilder, there is no tight end I would prefer more than Sam Laporta, to be honest. Like, and even Pitts included. Like, I guess if you're trying to tank your own production, then Pitts is a little better than Laporta. But honestly, like, I would prefer Laporta to Pitts straight up if I was a rebuilder right now.
Yeah, no, at the very least, at the same tier. At the very, very least. Yeah. So I agree there. So if we're evaluating this, like I said, let's just assume Marquise equals the 2. Give me Laporta over Musgrave and Stevenson all day, every day. Like, this is the same Ramondre Stevenson that doesn't look completely there this year. I don't know if it's health related, but he's splitting freaking snaps with Ezekiel Elliott. And then on the other side, you have a 22-year-old tight end who's on track to be a top 3 overall tight end as a rookie at a position that we normally don't see that.
Yeah, like we could be talking about the Dynasty tight end one, and it's not even close this offseason. Like if we close out this season and Sam Laporta is a top 3 tight end in redraft, he will be the Dynasty tight end one, and it won't even be close.
Yeah, not
In the
close.
offseason this year.
Yeah, like if there's only, let's just say, like a 2 to 2.5 point per game discrepancy between him and Andrews, the age complex is going to play there, and he will be the Dynasty tight end one.
Yeah, and I mean, some of that would depend on what Pitts does for the rest
For
of the
sure.
year. He's having an okay season, I would say. He's not terrible right now, but at the same time, like, Kyle Pitts in his 3rd season, and Sam Laporta is a rookie. And even though they're like relatively similar in age, like you have
Pitts
to
a year older,
the guy
right?
That's doing it. What's up?
You would think he's way older given the experience.
No,
Pitts
he's probably not that much
older.
older
A
because
year
Pitts was
older.
really young.
Yeah, a year older. That's crazy to me. Sorry, I just had to point that out. But yeah, I mean, Laporta this year. What are we looking at? Only one game with less than 5 targets on the year as a rookie tight end.
Yeah, pretty insane what Laporta is doing, honestly. Like his bad weeks are what he just did this past week. That's his bad weeks now. So
yeah, I mean, in his ultra bad week where he had only 7.6 against Tampa, he commanded 11 targets in that game.
Yeah, literally. So let's get into Austin's trade here. He's got a 12-team PPR super flex. He gets the Anthony Richardson side of this deal. He picked up an orphan in very rough shape this year, is what he said. He has a couple years before we'll actually compete. He said the guy with Anthony Richardson was top 3 and wanted more points to compete. He also says he's a Colts fan, so he loves this trade for multiple reasons. So you trade away. I mean, we talked about George Pickens already. He's, again, a name that I think was really interesting to see what his dynasty value would be. DeAndre Swift is, RB1 rest of the season, but, long term, we don't exactly know what we're doing with there. So especially for you as an orphan team, like you need Swift off of your roster. Like that would be my takeaway. If you guys have an orphan or a really heavy rebuild right now, do not hold a guy like DeAndre Swift. I understand maybe long term he gets extended by the Eagles or whatever. Trust me, you're better off getting that production off of your team and getting the value that he can get you right now, because he should be worth a 1st-round pick on the open market, given what the production is and the fact that he's still young and he plays for the Eagles and that kind of thing. So it's a super flex league, 12-team. Is Anthony Richardson worth this package himself?
By far. I would argue that maybe this is, let's just say for E's sake, again, I would prefer Downs to Mayfield. But for E's sake, let's just pretend that this was DeAndre Swift and Pickens for Anthony Richardson. If I was selling Anthony Richardson, I would need at least a 1st-round pick on the other side to even consider selling him. So the fact that you didn't have to pay that first, give me A-Rich all day.
This might be a hot take, dude, but I could say with almost solid confidence that Josh Downs and DeAndre Swift is not that far off a conversation from a raw dynasty value standpoint, because you're getting a guy that is young for an orphan team that's not ready to compete. Like the team situation that he is in specifically, a guy like Josh Downs is really going to appeal to you because, he's going to be pretty solid as a rookie. And then hopefully his prime years come, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 of his career. So I really like that trade. I mean, going after a guy that's injured is almost always a good idea when you have the luxury of time, right? As a non-competitive team, you don't give a shit that Anthony Richardson's going to miss the whole season. You don't care. You're looking for the guy that's going to be productive long-term for you. And that's what Anthony Richardson can represent, especially in a super flex league, in an orphan situation. You're looking for stable foundational assets, which is exactly what Anthony Richardson can be. And a bonus that you're a Colts fan too. So you can get to watch your guy every single week. So Daniel K, last trade that we're going to talk about here, and then we'll wrap up with our waiver targets early for week 8. And then we have Bijan Robinson on the move. So Bijan Robinson on the move here in exchange for Jerry Jeudy, Jaden Reed, and a first that he lists here. The 2024 first is late, expect to be really late. The 2025 first, he says, expects to be probably random, but he actually says mid to early. So we're talking about a potentially early to mid 2025 first. The picks that you're getting there, the 2025 second, the thirds. I mean, let's say for ease sake, would you take all of those picks for Jerry Jeudy? The second and the 3 thirds for Jerry Jeudy right now?
I was going to argue we might have a real conversation that pull the trade back up. We might have a real conversation that those picks on the left side probably equal Jeudy and Reed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Jeudy and Reed. Like right now, if you offered me a 2 and a 3 for Jeudy, I think I would take it, man. Like I think I would take it with the way that Jerry Jeudy has performed this year and the markets, not loving Jerry Jeudy right now. I think you can make the argument that all he is worth right now is a 2 and a 3. And Jaden Reed, I would probably want a 2 for him. So I would say, generally speaking, let's say that's, a second too short or something like that. But let's just say it equals Jerry Jeudy. The 2 and the 3 threes equal Jerry Jeudy. Then it's Jaden Reed and 2 1s for Bijan Robinson. And I believe, especially in a 10-team league, that Bijan Robinson is worth 3 firsts.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I want that side, especially knowing the context of the team. But I mean,
he does say he's not ready to compete yet. So I don't love the idea of going out and getting a running back when you're not ready to compete. But I will say, if you're going to go out and get a running back that's for a rebuild, Bijan is pretty much the only guy that you can go after.
Heavy rebuild last in the league by a mile. 24 first is late. 25 projects to be mid to early. Okay. I mean, the question is, it projects mid to early right now. Is there anything you can do to boost your own team to the point where it doesn't end up mid to early?
Oh, yeah, I guess it's his own 2025 first, presumably. It might not be his because he did cross out the name of the team, but it's possible that it is his own first as well. So either way, let's say it's like the 106 in 2025 and, the 109 this year. Like, I still want Bijan Robinson. Like, at face value, I think this trade is too short for a guy like Bijan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to close it out going through our top 5 waiver ads for week 8. Danny, of course, will go through his top 10 tomorrow in more in depth now that we have, context of Monday Night Football and all that kind of stuff. A couple guys that you want to make sure are rostered. So make sure these guys are not available on waivers. They are not on our top 5 list because they are rostered in over 40% of Yahoo, Sleeper, and ESPN leagues combined. Josh Downs, of course, had a monster game. Make sure he's rostered. Rashee Rice, monster game. Of course, make sure he's rostered. Roshan Johnson, probably could be available in your league. Maybe he was dropped this past week. Deontay Foreman, also of the Chicago Bears backfield. If you guys are wondering, what are our thoughts on this backfield going forward? I'd say, Deontay Foreman's the guy to own for sure because he's healthy and Roshan isn't. But Roshan coming back this week potentially would mean that it's probably going to be a 50-50 split. That would just be my kind of initial gut instinct. Chuba Hubbard, make sure to check your waiver wire because he was on bye this past week, so maybe somebody dropped him. And then Elijah Moore, also potentially dropped 2 weeks ago, now may be available after this game.
I also had a few more names here. Obviously, it's going to be unlikely, but if somehow somebody dropped JSN prior to this week, obviously you guys know to pick him up. Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans, very similar. He was supplanting Derrick Henry from a usage standpoint. Obviously, Derrick Henry is going to get the majority of the touches, but it's something to monitor that there's a back with this type of implied value who's looked really, really good, potentially available on your wire. Again, he's probably owned, but if he's not, go pick up Tajay Spears. And the other guy I want to mention is Kareem Hunt. Obviously, with Jerome Ford dealing with that ankle issue, Kareem Hunt, believe he came into the game questionable, played some snaps, looked decent, whatever. I feel like moving forward, if he becomes healthy, that if Jerome Ford were to miss any time, Kareem Hunt would be next.
It sounds like Jerome Ford will miss some time. So I would say not only Kareem Hunt, but also Pierre Strong is an honorable mention for this list. He's not on my list, but I would say he's probably an honorable mention because a lot of fantasy docs speculating that Jerome Ford suffered a high ankle sprain, which will probably keep him out for a game or two, if not multiple games. So keep that in mind. But the actual list itself, I have 3 honorable mentions here. Kyler Murray. If you guys need a quarterback, go and stash Kyler Murray. He's probably not going to be back this week, but he should be back in week 10.
He's on my list.
Or in week 9, sorry. And then we also have Zay Jones and Marvin Mims. Zay Jones, I think in deeper leagues, he's a good low-end flex play. And then Marvin Mims, more of a stash in case Jerry Jeudy gets traded. So those guys are honorable mentions for me. Who is your number 5?
Yeah, so my number 5 actually comes from Buffalo. And it's actually going to be Dalton Kincaid, tight end of the Buffalo Bills. Got 29 of the 46 team routes, commanded 8 targets on them. This is more so an upside play. I don't think necessarily that if you get Dalton Kincaid, should he really start in your lineup in the first week? No, not necessarily. I do think that he's probably more so a top 15-ish tight end at this point, rather than a set it and forget a top 12 guy. However, we want upside at the tight end position. Anytime a tight end shows the level of upside that Kincaid showed this past week, 8 receptions, 75 receiving yards, got more snaps like we kind of mentioned. I'm excited, man. Like, if he can develop into that number 2 weapon on Buffalo's offense, not only do I think is he going to be a top 12 tight end moving forward, I think he could potentially be a top 5, top 6 level guy. So therefore, maybe you only have to spend 5 to 10% of your fab. And like I said, you may want a intermediate option for the next, week or two. But if Dalton Kincaid keeps showing this type of role and he keeps earning this amount of targets, like I said, top 6 level guy.
Yeah, he's interesting. He's much higher on my list. So I will I can talk about him as well. The reason he's a lot higher is just because I don't really think this is a great week of waivers in terms of overall high-end pickups. As outside of the guys that we already talked about are probably rostered. Like, if those guys are available, pick him up over Dalton Kincaid. But he's actually my number 2. And I have him grouped in with Michael Mayer as my number 2 because Michael Mayer is still widely available, 23% rostered. And Michael Mayer also showed a very good step in the right direction from a usage standpoint. Somebody, can't remember who it was, said, hey, I told you about Michael Mayer. He's too slow to play tight end. Somebody said that in the chat early in the stream. And I'm telling you right now, what Michael Mayer showed is not worthy of being victory lapped. Like, the guy is literally commanding a lot of targets. He's commanding a lot of the routes right now. He played 81% of Vegas's offensive snaps in week 6. He comes out this week and he only missed 4 of 50 plays before they pulled the starters from that game. So he played pretty much every snap he could have in this past week's game. And he's a rookie tight end. Like I said, he was a very good prospect, very productive at Notre Dame. Even though he's not the greatest athlete in the world, he's still top 5 in the NFL, tackles avoided after the catch per reception. So again, on a combine in shorts and t-shirt, he's not the best athlete in the world, but on a football field, he is a good enough player to be a top 5, top 8 tight end rest of the season for me. Again, I don't think he's quite to that level yet. I want to see a little bit more. I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo back as well, and it sounds like he's going to be. But at the same time, if you guys are down at tight end, both Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer are excellent pickups for you rest of the season to maybe get a set it and forget it starter.
For the record, I have Kincaid as the 5, like I mentioned. Mayer would actually be my first off as my number 6. So I like Michael Mayer as well.
Yep. Okay. So getting down to my number 5, I already talked about him earlier in the takeaways portion. It's Jalen Hyatt. I think Jalen Hyatt's a pretty good pickup this week. 4 targets last week, 5 targets this past week, actually led all Giants wide receivers. And the past 2 games, we've seen this guy command legitimate routes. That's the thing that's been a problem for Jalen Hyatt so far this season, is that he's not really been on the field a lot. And now, over the last 3 games or so, he's been the number 2 option in terms of routes run, opposite of Darius Slayton in 2 wide receiver sets. So with Jalen Hyatt playing a full allotment of routes, he was a solid prospect. He wasn't a great prospect, but a guy that we're seeing, make big plays down the field, a guy that's actually commanding some targets now. So with Jalen Hyatt, I think if you're in a deeper league or if you need some upside on your bench at wide receiver, I think Jalen Hyatt makes some sense.
Yeah, I don't mind that. He is actually number 7 for me. So he just was right out. But that's also because one of your honorable mentions that you mentioned actually comes in as my number 4. So my number 4 is actually Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. Like you kind of mentioned on waivers this week, you're kind of just picking your guys and sticking with them. And with Kyler Murray, he's a guy that I want to hitch my wagon to. Obviously, the potential downside where he doesn't run the ball as much, obviously coming off that torn ACL does matter. But anytime I have the opportunity to get a player that has a legitimate ceiling of the pass of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson to be that type of fantasy quarterback, I'm swinging for the fences. And I understand, like I said, even if you're only getting 80, 85% Kyler Murray, that's still a 20-plus point per game quarterback. And any 20-plus point per game quarterback is going to be a legit difference maker in your lineup. That's a legitimate mid-range quarterback one that I think Kyler Murray can get back up to. Not to mention, this Cardinals offense has looked much better to start the year than I anticipated with Josh Dobbs at the helm. Michael Wilson's earning a full role. Marquise Brown, obviously number 1 wide receiver there. I think they have enough talent on this offense to be able to support Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray's shown the creating ability to be able to create on his own as well.
Yeah, and by the time Kyler Murray's back on the field, James Conner will probably be getting close to getting back as well. So that'll probably help out. Yeah, Kyler Murray, if you guys are in need of a quarterback, is definitely probably the best pickup of the week, if not one of the best pickups of the week. It sounds like he's a long shot to start next week, but he probably will be back in week 9, week 10, like we already kind of talked about there. So keep that in mind. He did have his practice window opened up, so they do actually have to officially add him to the active roster at the end of that 21 days. So the absolute latest he would be back on the field is week 10, but it's probably more likely he's on the field in week 9 from everything that I've kind of read about Kyler Murray. Number 4 on this list here is probably one that's going to go under the radar, but I do think it's a sneaky good pickup. We talked about him last week. Devin Singletary is my number 4 here. So he's rostered right now in 27% of leagues. Right before the bye, because they were just on bye, and that's probably why he wasn't picked up in a lot of people's leagues. And I actually went out on my waiver wire in my home league, and I was able to just add him. Like, I didn't even have to put in a waiver claim. I could just add him because he didn't play this week. And I can't remember who it was. I dropped Keontae Ingram or something like that because he was terrible. Devin Singletary outsnapped Dameon Pierce before the bye. I don't know if that's a trend that's going to keep up. I don't know if that's something that we really want to monitor, but 32 plays to 21 plays for Devin Singletary in favor of Dameon Pierce. If he is going to be the lead back here going forward, it's at least worth a speculative add, in my opinion. And they play the Carolina Panthers this week, who are bar none the worst run defense in the league. So if we get a decent game out of Devin Singletary, it wouldn't shock me at all if he was the number 1 waiver pickup this time next week. So I'm trying to get ahead of the curve and go after a guy that I think you can get for literally nothing right now and potentially be a viable flex player, a viable starter for you.
Yeah, so he's currently a top 8 overall waiver pickup for me as well. I honestly think this week there's no like clear, concise list, to be honest. Like I don't have much more confidence between my number 8 pickup and like my number 3 or number 2 pickup, to be quite honest, which you'll see in a second. Like my number 2 pickup is probably a guy you guys don't want to hear about, especially given what he's shown in the past. But not gonna, give away too much there. I'll go on to my number 3. And that's going to be Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver of the New England Patriots. Wasn't sure if you're going to talk about him or not, but
he would be in my honorable mentions. If I was doing the top 10 this week, he'd probably be like 9 or 10, I think. But he definitely had a great usage day again.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm willing to buy in on him is that we've seen that when he's trusted as that Patriots wide receiver 1 from a utilization standpoint, the guy earns targets. So in the 4 games, mumbled my words for a second. In the 4 games that he's played over 60% of the snaps, 11 targets, 5 targets, 11 targets, 7 targets. And at this current point of the year, trying to find that type of sustainable wide receiver production is gross. Like we're getting to the bye week portion where some of the guys in my top 30, my top 35, I don't feel great about. Well, guess what? If Kendrick Bourne keeps playing the way he has been these last few weeks, he's someone I feel great about because he's currently the wide receiver 24 in PPR on the season, which if you told anybody that 7 weeks into year, other than maybe Bush, because he's always been a Bourne stan, but you told anybody that Kendrick Bourne would be a top 24 wide receiver basically halfway through the season with how bad the Patriots offense looked, everybody would laugh at you. But man, like I see top 24 level upside rest of his way. If he keeps this type of role, who in that core stopping him from earning 7, 8, 9 targets on a week-to-week basis? And we've seen from the snap perspective, like I kind of circled out, like I kind of outlined, that he's treated like the team's wide receiver 1, ran the most routes, commanded the most targets. If he's treated in this role, I truly believe that he's the most talented wide receiver of this core, and he can continue putting on some really good fantasy points.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to notice what every other wide receiver was getting in terms of snaps and routes. Demario Douglas and Devontae Parker and Jalen Reagor citing for some reason. They realized that only Kendrick Bourne is the guy that they are relying on. And Juju's been out for a couple of weeks, but Juju is washed. I really don't care. So Kendrick Bourne, yeah, I think he would definitely be even potentially a little bit higher than I even gave him credit for on my list, because he's probably a viable starter in your lineup as a flex option, especially in bye weeks. Probably a lot of you guys did start him this week, and I'd imagine he probably paid off for you given the fact that he found the end zone. So I already talked about Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid were my number 2, but my number 3 is one that I can't believe I'm going to say because I am so done with this Cardinals backfield without James Conner. But Amari DiMercato is my number 3 ad of the week. Because again, like I don't like, is this gonna happen every single week? I have no fucking idea. I literally don't know. Maybe Keontae Ingram is the starter next week, and I look like an idiot for the 3rd week in a row on the Arizona Cardinals backfield. But if DiMercato is the back to own here, 53 of the 66 plays of the Cardinals backfield is significant. Most of the early down work, most of the 3rd down work, most of the 2-minute drill work. This guy played almost all the snaps. Like he has to be a guy that we consider as a solid waiver ad. And it's so disgusting because I've been screwed by this backfield over and over again, but he has to be a top ad this week.
That was what I was alluding to earlier when I said the guy that I have at 2 is someone that people aren't going to like, because like you said, Amari DiMercato saw bell cow usage this week after the week after everybody's like, oh, blow your fab on him. He's going to be a stud. He's going to get the work. Disappoints in a one random week off, apparently. Everybody drops him probably because they say, oh, you know what? He's probably the 3rd back on the pecking order, work behind Damian Williams, work behind Keontae Ingram. So now, like, how much would you bid on Amari DiMercato? Like, obviously, it's risky because we saw it could just completely go away within a week. But if we were promised this usage on a week-to-week basis until Connor gets back, he would be a 100% fab player.
He would be, but I'm not bidding that much on him because I don't think it's promised. So I'd say 20 to 40% of your remaining budget, not of your overall budget coming into the season. So my leagues were like $100 fab coming into the year. If you had $35 left and you wanted to bid 15 of that on DiMercato, like, yeah, I think that's probably viable.
Fuck, man, how far we've come. But I feel like we can close off the video with my clear number 1 ad. I'm assuming he's your clear number 1 ad. Someone that I don't know. This is just the summary of week 7 fantasy football. The fact that we're talking about this guy as the number 1 ad, especially considering that his teammate was a guy that we considered a top 3 ad just last week, and he ends up playing no snaps. Obviously, we're talking about Darrell Henderson himself, who goes out there and has an absolute stranglehold on this backfield. Royce Freeman was absolutely mixed in, do not get me wrong, but the valuable touches, he had the lead in third down snaps. He had the lead in early down snaps, 39-29 overall edge, and the lead in terms of opportunity share in this backfield. Like, he knows the system. He knows the coaching staff. He has familiarity with the offense. Like, if I'm going to bet anybody on anybody from this Rams backfield, it's got to be Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, 3 running backs over the past couple of years get a full workload from Sean McVay. Kyron Williams, who's now out for 3 more games because he was put on IR before the game, so he's out for 3 more games. Cam Akers in very limited snaps and sets sometimes last year and 2 years ago, and Darrell Henderson. Those are the 3 guys he trusts with the full workload, and Darrell Henderson has to be the number 1 add this week. If you're in need of running backs, I'm cool blowing every last dime that you have on Darrell Henderson, to be honest. If you're a 2-5 team and you need to win and you don't have an RB2 because A-Chain is out and Montgomery is out or whoever you had, then yeah, I'm fine going all of my fab, all my remaining fab left on Darrell Henderson because he's going to be an every week RB2 until Kyron Williams comes back.
I completely agree.
And I'm pissed at myself for not picking this guy up for free last week, and I'm not going to get over that.
And I'm curious, like, how much do you think he was actually drafted in best ball?
Probably not very much, but the thing that's really annoying about Darrell Henderson is that I knew it, right? Like last week, what did I keep saying? I kept saying Darrell Henderson will probably lead this backfield in touches, and for some reason, I didn't put my money where my mouth is and actually go and pick the guy up. I think Danny's camera died, so we'll get him in on the webcam for the last portion of the stream here.
Of course, it wouldn't be a nice stream without a little webcam action, but yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up.
Also, make sure to add Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell if they haven't been, like maybe they were dropped or something like that. When Christian McCaffrey was announced that he was going to play, which has officially come out, he could re-aggravate the injury, right? So definitely make sure that Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell are rostered. But we can close out the stream with a couple super chats that we got. Earlier on, Brody said, my wife had a 4-player touchdown parlay that Bijan tanked. I can beat that, Brody. I had a 4-player touchdown parlay that I made on Sunday morning's live stream that Josh Jacobs was half a footstep away from hitting.
Yeah. How much would that have paid, by the way?
$890.
Is that the only leg that missed?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because
I'm so sorry.
I took the Wandale one out of it.
Oh my God.
So that one would have missed also if I had kept the Wandale one in it, but I took the Wandale one out of it and I put a Deontay Foreman anytime touchdown instead. So Foreman hit, Brian Robinson hit, and I can't remember who the other guy was that needed to score a touchdown, but those guys hit and Josh Jacobs was the only one that missed.
Yeah.
And he literally scored a touchdown, except his feet weren't in bounds.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then AJ said, yo, Bush, get absolutely smoked by the Dirty Birds. I mean, smoked is a strong phrase to talk about the performance that your Falcons put out. So, I mean, you guys just didn't want to lose as much as we did, is basically what happened.
Yeah, literally, though.
Yeah, literally.
That's insane.
Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoy the game tonight. We will have a number of videos coming out this week, waiver targets. Me and Danny are going to break down our own dynasty trades that we've done throughout the season later on, probably tomorrow at some point. And then on Wednesday, of course, we'll have trade targets. Thursday, we'll have, fantasy matchups that matter. And then Friday, wide receiver tier list. Saturday, running back tier list. And then next week, obviously, we'll be in a bit in flux because I'm actually going to Mexico tomorrow or a week from today on Monday. So we'll have kind of sporadic, schedule going on. Danny will be handling some stuff. I'll still have a trade target video coming from Mexico. I'm going to record that in the resort because I feel like it. And then also we're going to probably have a little bit, maybe more live streams or something like that. Less, pre-planned content because I'm going to be out of town, but definitely hit the like on the stream if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Check out all the links down below in the description for Flock Fantasy, for Underdog Fantasy, for all of our sponsors. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.